In 2027, Detroit became the first U.S. city to let an AI system issue binding court rulings. Within 6 months, case backlogs dropped 70%, but then a mother lost custody of her daughter based on an algorithm she couldn't question.
The system analyzed 15,000 data points in 3 seconds. No human judge could process that much information. And statistically, it made fewer errors than human judges over the same period.
But here's what terrifies me. When that mother asked why she lost her child, the AI couldn't explain its reasoning in human terms, just probabilities and risk scores.
I read about that case. She was devastated. How do you appeal a decision when there's no judge to look in the eye, no human bias to challenge, just code?
That's exactly what we're diving into today. AI judges are no longer science fiction. Several countries are already testing them for minor cases. But the question isn't just can they work, it's should they exist at all? Because we're talking about replacing one of humanity's oldest institutions with something that doesn't feel, doesn't understand context the way we do, and operates in ways even its creators can't fully explain.
And honestly, the data coming out is complicated. It's not a simple good or bad story.
Right. There are cities where AI-assisted sentencing has reduced racial disparities in drug cases by 40%. That's significant.
But at what cost? There's something deeply unsettling about removing human judgment from justice entirely.
So let's unpack this. We'll look at how these systems actually work, the promises they're making, the failures that keep me up at night, and what happens when we automate something as fundamental as deciding guilt or innocence. Iris, start us off. What exactly is an AI judge?
Okay, so when we say AI judge, we're really talking about machine learning systems trained on decades of legal cases, precedents, evidence analysis, and sentencing patterns. The most advanced versions use something called deep learning neural networks. They can analyze case files, witness testimonies, forensic evidence, even body language from video depositions, and then generate rulings based on patterns from millions of previous cases.
And cities are testing this because the court system is drowning, right?
Exactly. In the US alone, there are over 40 million court cases filed annually. Some defendants wait years for trial. The system is fundamentally broken from a capacity standpoint. An AI can process cases in minutes that would take human judges weeks to review properly.
But Iris, processing speed is one thing. Justice is another. Can an algorithm truly understand justice?
Well, here's where it gets interesting. A 2024 study from MIT analyzed 30,000 criminal cases in jurisdictions using AI-assisted sentencing versus traditional courts. The AI system showed 23% less variance in sentencing for similar crimes. That means more consistency. If you and I commit the same offense with similar circumstances, we're more likely to get similar sentences from an AI than from different human judges who might be having a bad day or who have implicit biases they don't even recognize.
Okay, but consistency isn't the same as fairness, right? If the system is consistently harsh, that's not better.
Fair point. But the data also showed AI systems were 17% less likely to impose maximum sentences for first-time offenders compared to human judges. They're actually more lenient in specific categories.
Wait, let me push back on that. The MIT study also noted something crucial. These systems are trained on historical case data, and our justice system has been documented as deeply biased for decades. If you train an AI on biased data, you're essentially automating inequality.
That's the concern that keeps coming up. You're teaching the machine using the same cases that reflected human prejudice.
Exactly. There was this case in 2023, before the Detroit pilot, where a predictive sentencing algorithm in Florida was found to be twice as likely to label black defendants as high risk for reoffending compared to white defendants with identical criminal histories. The ACLU sued, and the algorithm was suspended. But here's the scary part. No one could figure out exactly why the AI was making those predictions. The neural network was too complex. Even the engineers couldn't trace the decision path.
That's actually terrifying. You're telling me we could have a system making life-altering decisions and nobody can explain why?
That's exactly what I'm saying. It's called the black box problem. These neural networks have billions of parameters. They learn patterns humans never explicitly programmed. Sometimes those patterns are brilliant. Sometimes they're picking up on correlations that reflect systemic bias. And we can't always tell which is which.
But Elias, that's also true of human judges. We can't crack open a judge's brain and understand exactly why they ruled a certain way. Judges have unconscious biases too. At least with AI, we can audit the outcome statistically and correct the training data.
Can we though? I mean, really? How do you unbias centuries of legal precedent? Every case the AI learns from is a product of the system we're trying to fix.
And that's the core tension, right? We're trying to use a tool built on our past to create a better future. Daphne, you've been quiet. What's your take on this?
Honestly, I keep thinking about that mother in Detroit. Like, imagine sitting in a courtroom and an AI voice tells you you're losing your child. And when you ask why, you get a probability score. Not a conversation. Not a human being who can look at you and say, I've considered your circumstances, I've weighed this carefully. Just numbers.
You're talking about the humanity of the process.
Yeah, justice isn't just about the outcome. It's about being heard, being seen as a human being with context and complexity. An AI can't do that. It can't understand what it feels like to struggle, to make mistakes, to deserve a second chance. It just sees data points.
But doesn't that cut both ways? Human judges bring empathy, sure, but they also bring bad days, personal prejudices, political pressures. A judge in an election year might sentence more harshly to appear tough on crime. An AI doesn't have those external pressures.
True, but you're trading one set of flaws for another. And I'm not convinced the AI's flaws are better, they're just different, and maybe less visible, which makes them more dangerous.
There's actually research on this. A Stanford study in 2024 found that people are more likely to accept unfair outcomes from AI systems than from human judges because they assume the AI is objective. But the AI isn't objective, it's just opaque.
So we might trust it more even when we shouldn't.
Exactly. And that's a recipe for unchecked power. At least with human judges, we know they're flawed. We've built appeal systems, ethical review boards, judicial oversight. With AI, we're kind of hoping the code is fair.
Okay, but let me offer a counterpoint here. The current system isn't working. People are sitting in jail for years waiting for trial because we don't have enough judges. Defendants are pleading guilty to crimes they didn't commit just to avoid the uncertainty of trial. If AI can process cases faster and reduce those backlogs, isn't that a form of justice too? The justice of actually getting your day in court?
That's a strong point. Speed matters when people's lives are on hold.
Right, and there are safeguards being developed. Hybrid systems where AI does the initial analysis and case prep, but a human judge makes the final ruling. That could combine efficiency with humanity.
I could see that working better. Like, the AI handles the grunt work, the data analysis, the precedent research, but a human makes the call.
That's closer to what most legal experts are advocating for. Nobody serious is saying we should hand over full judicial power to AI tomorrow. It's about augmentation, not replacement.
But Detroit did go further. They allowed binding rulings for certain case types.
They did, and it's been controversial. The cases are supposed to be low stakes. Traffic violations, small claims, minor civil disputes. But the backlash has been significant.
Let's talk about that backlash. What exactly went wrong in Detroit?
Well, the most publicized case was actually a small business dispute. A contractor sued a homeowner for non-payment. Pretty straightforward case, right? The AI ruled in favor of the contractor, ordered the homeowner to pay $15,000 plus fees. But here's the thing. The homeowner had documentation that the work was incomplete and shoddy. Photos, timestamps, expert assessments. The AI somehow weighted the contractor's invoices and contract language more heavily than the quality of work evidence.
Oh no, so the homeowner lost even though they had legitimate grounds?
Exactly. And when they tried to appeal, they discovered the appeals process for AI rulings was unclear. Who do you appeal to? Another AI? A human judge who has to second-guess an algorithm they don't fully understand? It created this bizarre legal limbo.
But that sounds like an implementation problem, not a fundamental flaw with AI judges. Like, they didn't set up proper oversight mechanisms.
Maybe, but it reveals something important. We're designing these systems faster than we're designing the safeguards. Detroit rushed into it because they had political pressure to innovate, to be first, and people got hurt.
Iris, you seem more optimistic about this technology than Elias. Why?
Because I think we're focusing too much on early failures and not enough on the potential. Yes, Detroit made mistakes. But look at Singapore. They've been using AI-assisted judges since 2023 for immigration cases, and their system has a 92% satisfaction rate from both applicants and immigration attorneys. They built in human review at multiple stages. They made the AI's reasoning transparent. They required the system to flag cases where it had low confidence for human override.
So it can work if implemented carefully.
Exactly. And here's something people don't talk about enough. Human judges are incredibly inconsistent. There was a study, I think it was from the University of Chicago in 2019, that found judges give harsher sentences right before lunch and more lenient sentences right after. Like, your freedom depends on whether the judge is hungry. That's absurd.
Wait, seriously? That's kind of horrifying.
Completely serious. Another study found that judges in Pennsylvania were more punitive on days when the local football team lost. Our judicial system is being influenced by factors that have nothing to do with justice. An AI doesn't get hungry, it doesn't care about football. In that sense, it's more fair.
Okay, I see your point, but I don't know. There's something about removing the human element entirely that feels wrong. Like, justice is supposed to be about people understanding people.
That's interesting. You're saying there's value in the imperfection?
Not the imperfection exactly, more like the humanity. The ability to recognize when someone deserves mercy, or when circumstances are unusual enough that the rules shouldn't apply the same way. Can an AI really do that?
Actually, yes. Modern AI systems can be programmed with mercy protocols. They can recognize mitigating factors: poverty, mental health issues, lack of prior record, evidence of rehabilitation. They can weigh those factors more consistently than humans who might be sympathetic one day and harsh the next.
But who decides what factors deserve mercy? Who programs those protocols? Because that's a value judgment, not a mathematical equation. And whoever controls the code controls the justice system.
That's a huge point. We're talking about concentrating power in the hands of whoever designs these systems.
Right. And those designers are mostly engineers at tech companies, not judges or ethicists or community representatives. There's a company called Justice AI that's developing these systems for multiple states. It's a private company. They have proprietary algorithms. We don't know exactly how their systems make decisions because it's a trade secret.
Ugh, that's dystopian. Private companies controlling the justice system?
It's already happening. Not just in courts, but in bail decisions, parole hearings, even predictive policing. Algorithms determining who gets locked up and who goes free, and we can't audit them because of corporate secrecy.
Okay, but that's an argument for regulation and transparency, not for abandoning the technology. We should require open source algorithms for public justice systems. Make the code auditable. That solves the secrecy problem.
In theory, yes. In practice, these neural networks are so complex that even if you have access to the code, it's nearly impossible to understand why they make specific decisions. You'd need teams of data scientists spending weeks analyzing each case. That's not practical.
So we're stuck between a broken human system and an opaque AI system?
I don't think we're stuck. I think we're in a transition period. The technology will get better. Explainable AI is a massive field of research right now. In 5 years, we might have systems that can show their reasoning in plain language.
But in the meantime, people's lives are in the balance. We're experimenting on them.
We're experimenting on them with the current system too. Every time a judge lets their personal bias affect a ruling, that's an experiment. At least with AI, we can track outcomes systematically and fix problems at scale.
Let's dig into a specific scenario. Say you're accused of a crime you didn't commit. Would you rather face a human judge or an AI judge?
Human, no question.
Human for me too.
Actually, I'd probably choose AI depending on the crime.
Why?
Because if it's a case where evidence is clear and objective, I trust an AI to analyze it more thoroughly than a human who might be distracted, overworked, or biased. If I'm innocent and the data proves it, an AI is more likely to see that than a human who's already made up their mind based on my appearance or background.
But what if the evidence isn't clear? What if it's ambiguous and you need someone to believe your story, to see you as a person?
Then yeah, maybe I'd want a human. But here's the thing, most people who face judges don't get that understanding anyway. They get overworked public defenders, judges who've seen thousands of similar cases and become desensitized, and a system that's already decided they're probably guilty. At least an AI doesn't have those prejudices.
Or it has different prejudices baked into its training data. Look, I get what you're saying, Iris. The current system is broken, but I'm not convinced replacing it with AI is the answer. I think it's a lateral move. We're trading known problems for unknown ones.
What if it's not replacement, but collaboration? Like Iris mentioned earlier, hybrid systems.
That's more palatable. But we need to be really careful about how we implement it. The AI shouldn't have too much influence, or the human judge just becomes a rubber stamp. But if the AI has too little influence, what's the point?
The point is efficiency and consistency. Even if a human makes the final call, having AI handle evidence analysis, precedent research, and risk assessment saves time and provides a more complete picture.
Wow, I could support that. Like, the AI is a tool, not a replacement. The same way a calculator helps with math but doesn't replace a mathematician.
Okay, so we've talked about the theory. Let's get into what's actually happening right now. Beyond Detroit, where else are AI judges being tested?
Well, there are pilots in at least 12 countries. Estonia has been using AI for small claims since 2021. China has AI judges handling contract disputes in several provinces. Dubai implemented them for traffic violations in 2023. And in the US, besides Detroit, there are quieter pilots in Austin and Phoenix focusing on administrative law cases.
And that's what worries me. This is spreading faster than we're understanding the consequences. Estonia is interesting because they published their data. Over 3 years, they processed about 27,000 cases with AI judges. The resolution time dropped from an average of 8 months to 3 weeks.
That's massive. 3 weeks versus 8 months?
Yeah. But here's what the data also showed. Appeal rates jumped 43% compared to human judges. People were more likely to challenge the AI's decisions.
Because they didn't trust it?
That's part of it. But also because when you lose to a human judge, there's this sense of acceptance, I guess? Like a person heard your case and made a judgment. With AI, people felt like they never got their day in court. The psychological aspect of justice matters.
But Elias, if more people are appealing, isn't that actually a good thing? It means the system is more accessible. Maybe people were too intimidated to appeal human judges before.
Maybe. Or maybe it means the AI is making more questionable decisions that warrant appeal. The data doesn't tell us which interpretation is correct.
What about the China example? That seems like it could be complicated given their political system.
It is complicated. China has rolled out AI judges in commercial courts pretty aggressively. They're claiming 97% accuracy in contract dispute resolution. But there's no independent verification of those numbers. And the system is designed to reinforce efficiency over individual rights, which aligns with their broader governance approach.
That's kind of terrifying as a model. Like if authoritarian governments adopt this technology, it becomes another tool for control.
Exactly. This is the dual-use problem with AI judges. In a democratic society with strong institutions, maybe it can improve access to justice. But in an authoritarian context, it's a way to automate oppression at scale. You can process thousands of dissidents through a system that appears neutral but is programmed to deliver predetermined outcomes.
So the technology itself is neutral, but the implementation reveals political values.
Right. And that's true of all technology, but it's especially dangerous with justice systems because we're talking about freedom, rights, fundamental human dignity. Get it wrong and the consequences are catastrophic.
I agree with that, which is why I think democracies need to lead on this. If we don't develop ethical, transparent AI justice systems, authoritarian regimes will develop opaque, controlling ones, and that becomes the global standard.
That's actually a really important point. The first movers might set the norms for everyone else.
Exactly. And right now, we're at a crossroads. We can either engage thoughtfully with this technology and shape it according to democratic values, or we can reject it entirely and watch other countries forge ahead without our input.
But engaging thoughtfully takes time. And in the meantime, people are being subjected to systems that aren't ready, like that mother in Detroit. She was collateral damage in an experiment.
I hear you. But people are collateral damage in the current system too. How many people sit in jail for months because they can't afford bail, waiting for an overworked public defender and a judge who has 300 other cases? That's also an experiment that's failing.
So we're choosing between two broken systems.
We're choosing whether to try to fix the system we have or keep limping along with what we know is broken. I'd rather try something new with proper safeguards than accept the status quo.
Okay, but let's talk about those safeguards. What would they actually look like? Because I hear people say we need transparency and oversight, but I don't see concrete mechanisms being implemented.
Good question. Iris, if you were designing an AI judge system from scratch, what protections would you build in?
First, mandatory human review for any case involving more than 6 months of jail time or more than $10,000 in financial impact. The AI can recommend, but a human judge must approve and can override.
Okay, I like that. What else?
Second, explainability requirements. The AI must be able to provide a written explanation of its reasoning in plain language, citing specific evidence and legal precedents. No more black boxes.
How do you enforce that if the neural network itself is too complex to explain?
You design it differently. There are interpretable machine learning models that sacrifice some accuracy for transparency. It might mean the AI is 90% as good as the most advanced neural networks, but we can actually understand its decisions. That trade-off is worth it for justice systems.
I'd add a third requirement: community oversight boards with veto power. Not just lawyers and judges, but ordinary citizens who can review AI decisions and flag patterns that seem unjust, even if they're technically legal.
Like jury duty, but for algorithm oversight?
Exactly. Because the people most affected by these systems should have a voice in how they operate. Right now, it's tech companies and government officials making decisions behind closed doors.
I actually really like that idea. It democratizes the process.
What about the training data? If the AI learns from biased historical cases, how do you fix that?
That's tough. One approach is to deliberately reweight the training data to counteract known biases. For example, if historical data shows harsher sentences for Black defendants, you can adjust the algorithm to correct for that disparity.
But who decides what's a bias versus what's a legitimate pattern? That's a value judgment.
It is, which is why you need diverse teams making those decisions. Not just engineers, but ethicists, civil rights lawyers, community advocates, people who understand the history of injustice in the legal system.
Let's bring this back to something concrete. There was another case I read about, I think in Phoenix. A small business owner was facing eviction, and an AI judge ruled against them based on late rent payments. But the business owner had documentation that their rent checks were being cashed late by the landlord, creating a false record of delinquency. The AI missed that context.
Yeah, I know that case. It highlights a fundamental limitation. AI is good at processing structured data, invoices, payment records, dates, amounts, but understanding context, recognizing when something doesn't add up, that requires human judgment.
Exactly. A human judge might look at that pattern and think, wait, something's weird here. Let me dig deeper. An AI just sees late payments and applies the rule.
But that's fixable. You can train AI to recognize anomalies and flag them for human review. The Phoenix case led to policy changes where the AI now automatically escalates cases with inconsistent payment patterns.
So we're learning from failures. That's good. But each failure represents a real person who got hurt.
How many failures are acceptable before we decide the experiment isn't worth it?
That's not a fair question, Adrian. How many failures in the current system are acceptable? Wrongful convictions, excessive sentences, people pleading guilty because they can't afford bail? We tolerate massive failures every day.
But at least with human failures, we can hold someone accountable. A judge can be removed from the bench, disbarred, even prosecuted for corruption. Who do you hold accountable when an algorithm screws up?
That's the accountability gap, and it's huge. Is it the engineer who wrote the code? The company that trained the model? The government agency that deployed it? The judge who approved using it? Everyone points fingers, and nobody takes responsibility.
Which again argues for clear legal frameworks before widespread deployment. We need laws that establish liability for AI decisions.
Let's shift gears for a minute. I think a lot of people hear AI judge and they don't really understand what that means, technically. Iris, can you break down how these systems actually work? Like what's happening under the hood?
Sure. So at the most basic level, an AI judge is a machine learning model, specifically what's called a supervised learning system. You feed it thousands or millions of historical court cases. Each case includes the facts, the evidence presented, the relevant laws, and the outcome. The AI looks for patterns in how certain facts and evidence correlate with certain outcomes.
So it's basically pattern matching on a massive scale.
Exactly, but it's more sophisticated than simple pattern matching. Modern systems use deep neural networks, which are computational structures loosely inspired by how human brains process information. They have layers of artificial neurons that can identify increasingly complex patterns. The first layer might recognize basic facts like defendant age or prior convictions. Deeper layers might recognize more abstract patterns like how certain combinations of factors typically influence sentencing.
And this is where the black box problem comes in, right?
Right, because with deep neural networks, the system creates its own internal representations of concepts that humans didn't explicitly program. It might discover that certain word patterns in police reports correlate with conviction rates, but we can't always articulate what pattern it found or why it matters.
It's so weird. It's learning things we didn't teach it.
Well, we taught it to learn, we just didn't specify what to learn. It's like if you showed a child thousands of paintings and said, figure out which ones are valuable. The child might notice patterns you never consciously recognized. Brushstroke style, color palette, composition rules. The AI does the same thing with legal cases.
But here's the problem with that analogy. If a child explains why they think a painting is valuable and their reasoning is flawed, we can correct them. With neural networks, we often can't even access the reasoning to evaluate it.
That's true for the most complex models, but there are simpler, more interpretable models that trade some accuracy for explainability. Decision trees, for example. The AI shows you a literal tree diagram of its logic. If the defendant has no prior record and the crime is nonviolent and there's evidence of provocation, then recommend probation. You can follow the reasoning.
So why not use those instead?
Because they're less accurate. A decision tree might get 75% of cases right. A deep neural network might get 88% right. That 13% difference represents real people who get fairer outcomes.
But if you can't explain the 13%, how do you know they're actually fairer? maybe the neural network is just better at replicating biased patterns.
That's a valid concern, which is why responsible AI development includes bias testing. You analyze the outcomes across different demographic groups. If the system is sentencing Black defendants more harshly than white defendants with identical circumstances, you've detected bias and you retrain the model to correct it.
Except that bias testing assumes you know what to test for. What about biases we haven't thought to measure? What about intersectional biases that only emerge when you look at combinations of race, gender, and socioeconomic status? Hell no.
You test for those too. There are statistical methods for detecting disparate impact across multiple dimensions.
In theory, yes. In practice, most deployments don't do comprehensive bias testing because it's expensive and time-consuming. There's this pressure to deploy quickly, to show results, to justify the investment.
So corners get cut.
Corners get cut, and people suffer the consequences. Look at the Compass algorithm, which has been used in US courts since 2000 to predict recidivism risk. ProPublica did an investigation in 2016 and found it was incorrectly labeling Black defendants as high risk at twice the rate of white defendants. The algorithm had been in use for 16 years before someone did rigorous independent testing.
16 years, that's so many people affected.
Hundreds of thousands. And that's just one algorithm in one application. Now multiply that across all the AI systems being deployed in criminal justice. Bail decisions, parole eligibility, sentencing recommendations. Each one potentially carrying hidden biases that won't be discovered for years.
Okay, but the Compass case also shows that we can detect and correct these problems. After ProPublica's investigation, there was massive scrutiny. Better alternatives were developed. The system improved.
It took a major media investigation and public outcry. That's not a reliable correction mechanism. We need proactive testing before deployment, not reactive fixes after damage is done.
Let me ask you something, Iris. You're clearly passionate about this technology. But do you ever worry that we're moving too fast?
Honestly, yeah, I do worry. I think AI has enormous potential to make justice more accessible and equitable. But I also recognize we're in uncharted territory. My push for engagement isn't about rushing adoption. It's about making sure we develop this technology thoughtfully, rather than abandoning the field to people who don't care about fairness.
That's actually really honest. I appreciate that.
I mean, look, I'm a data scientist. I love what algorithms can do. But I'm not blind to the risks. I just think the answer is better algorithms, not no algorithms. Because the alternative, the purely human system, is also deeply flawed.
And I'm not saying we should never use AI in courts. I'm saying we need to be incredibly careful, move slowly, and prioritize protecting vulnerable people over efficiency gains.
So you two aren't actually that far apart.
Maybe not. We both want justice. We just disagree on the path to get there.
Daphne, you've been quiet. What's on your mind?
I'm just thinking about what it would feel like to stand in a courtroom and know that your fate is being decided by something that doesn't experience life the way you do. Like, I keep coming back to that. An algorithm has never felt fear or desperation or hope. It's never made a mistake and regretted it. How can it judge human behavior without understanding what it means to be human?
But that's also its strength. It doesn't bring prejudice or emotional baggage. It evaluates facts objectively.
Is objectivity always good, though? Sometimes you need someone to see beyond the facts, to recognize that yes, this person broke the law, but there are circumstances that explain why, and those circumstances matter.
That's the mercy question, and it's fundamental. Justice isn't just about applying rules correctly. It's about knowing when to bend the rules because the human situation demands it.
Can you teach an AI mercy?
You can program it to consider mitigating factors. First-time offender, acted under duress, evidence of rehabilitation. Those can be weighted in the decision-making process.
But that's not mercy. That's just calculating which rule to apply. Mercy is looking at a person and deciding they deserve another chance, even when the rules say they don't.
And that's why I think there are limits to what AI should do in the justice system. It can assist, it can process information, it can flag inconsistencies. But the final decision, especially in cases where someone's freedom is at stake, should always involve a human being capable of mercy.
Even if that human being is also capable of cruelty, bias, and having a bad day?
Yes, because at least we can appeal to their humanity. You can't appeal to an algorithm's humanity. It doesn't have any.
We're hitting on something really deep here. The question isn't just, can AI judges work? It's what do we lose if they do work? What's the cost of efficiency and consistency if the price is removing human judgment from justice?
Exactly. And I don't think we've grappled with that enough as a society. We're so focused on whether we can build this technology that we haven't really asked whether we should.
Let's talk about a specific scenario that I think tests all of these ideas. Imagine a teenager shoplifts from a convenience store. First offense, security footage is clear, value of the stolen item is maybe $30. If an AI judge handles this case versus a human judge, what's different?
Well, first, let's think about what a human judge might consider. They might look at the kid's background. Are they from a stable home? Do they have parents in the courtroom? What's their school record? Are there signs of deeper problems like substance abuse or gang involvement? A human judge might decide that diversion programs or community service makes more sense than putting this on the kid's permanent record.
An AI could consider all of those factors too. School records, family structure, neighborhood crime rates, psychological assessments. Actually, an AI could probably process more contextual information than a human judge who's seeing 40 cases that day.
But would it understand what it's looking at? Like, okay, the AI sees the kid is from a low-income neighborhood with high crime rates. Does it interpret that as a risk factor or as a mitigating circumstance? Because a human judge might think, this kid is trying to survive in a tough environment, let's give them support. But an algorithm might think, high crime area equals higher recidivism risk, therefore harsher penalty.
That's exactly the problem. The interpretation of context requires human understanding of social dynamics, empathy, and values. An AI doesn't have that. It has correlations.
Okay, but we can design the system to treat certain factors as mitigating rather than aggravating. That's a design choice. If we know that poverty is a context that deserves compassion rather than punishment, we program that in.
But who decides how to program it? Because different people have different philosophies about justice. Some people think tough consequences deter future crime, others think support and rehabilitation are more effective. An AI judge embodies one philosophy, and that becomes the default for everyone.
Right, and that's concerning because it removes discretion. A human judge can say, I generally believe in tough consequences, but in this particular case, I'm going to be lenient because I see something special here. An AI follows its programming. It can't have a change of heart.
Ugh, that's such a good point. Some of the best judicial decisions in history came from judges who went against the prevailing rules because they recognized an injustice. Can an AI do that?
Not autonomously, no. But you could build in mechanisms for humans to override AI recommendations in exceptional cases. That's actually how most proposed systems work. The AI provides a baseline recommendation, but judges retain final authority.
So the AI is more like a judicial assistant than a replacement.
In the most responsible implementations, yes, it does the analytical heavy lifting so the human judge can focus on the aspects that require wisdom and judgment.
But there's a risk there too. If the AI always provides a recommendation, the human judge might just rubber stamp it most of the time. It becomes the path of least resistance. Over time, the AI's judgment effectively becomes the standard, even if humans technically have override power.
Like when your GPS tells you to turn and you just follow it without thinking, even when it's taking you a weird route.
Exactly. We defer to automated systems even when we shouldn't. There's actually research on this, what's it called? Automation bias. People trust computer-generated recommendations more than human advice, even when the computer is wrong.
So we might trust the AI too much.
Yes, and in the context of justice, that's dangerous. A study from the University of Pennsylvania in 2023 found that judges who received AI sentencing recommendations deviated from those recommendations only 12% of the time, even in cases where the recommendation was questionable.
But that might mean the AI is getting it right 88% of the time. Why is that bad?
Because we don't know if it's getting it right or if judges are just being lazy. The study didn't evaluate the quality of outcomes, it just measured compliance. And that's concerning because it suggests judges stop thinking critically when they have an AI crutch.
It's like when you use a calculator so much you forget how to do mental math. Your brain atrophies in that area because you don't need it anymore.
So even in a hybrid system, we risk losing the human element over time.
That's my fear, yeah. The AI doesn't have to replace judges formally, it just has to make them intellectually lazy, and we end up with de facto AI judges even though we claim humans are still in charge.
Okay, I see that risk. But isn't the answer better training for judges on how to use AI tools critically? We don't abandon calculators because some people don't understand math. We teach people to use calculators responsibly.
Maybe, but justice feels different than math. The stakes are higher. the margin for error is smaller.
Let's think about another dimension of this: public trust. If people know AI is involved in their court cases, does that increase or decrease their faith in the justice system?
Decrease, I think, at least initially. People want to be seen and heard by another human being. Knowing a machine is making decisions about your life feels dehumanizing.
But we use machines in medicine all the time. MRI scans, blood tests, even AI-assisted diagnosis. People trust those because they work. If AI judges demonstrably produce fairer outcomes, trust will follow.
Medicine is different, though. A blood test gives you objective data. A court case involves subjective judgments about credibility, intent, circumstances. People accept machines for objective tasks, but resist them for subjective ones.
Is that rational or just psychological resistance to change?
Maybe both. But even if it's partially psychological, it matters. The legitimacy of the justice system depends on public acceptance. If people feel the system is illegitimate, they won't respect its rulings, and that erodes social order.
So we need to bring the public along, educate them about how the technology works, involve them in oversight, demonstrate that outcomes are fair. It's not impossible.
But you're assuming people will accept it if they understand it. I'm not sure that's true. Some people will never be comfortable with AI judges no matter how well they work, because it violates their sense of what justice should be.
And are those people wrong?
I don't think so. I think they're expressing something important about human values. Justice isn't just about outcomes, it's about process, dignity, being treated as a person rather than a data point.
The philosopher John Rawls wrote about procedural justice versus distributive justice. Distributive justice is about fair outcomes. Procedural justice is about the fairness of the process itself. You can have perfect outcomes, but if the process feels unjust, people reject it.
So you're saying even if AI judges produce better results, people might reject them because the process doesn't feel fair?
Exactly. And that's not irrational. Humans need to feel respected and heard. That's a legitimate requirement for a justice system, not just a psychological quirk we need to overcome.
This is really getting at the heart of it. Are we designing justice systems for efficiency or for human dignity? Can we have both?
I think we can. But it requires thoughtful design. The AI shouldn't be invisible. People should know it's being used and how. They should understand what it's analyzing and have the right to question it. Transparency might actually increase trust.
Maybe, but there's still something that bothers me. When you're in a courtroom and things aren't going your way, you can look at the judge and make a last plea. You can show emotion, express remorse, demonstrate your humanity. Can you do that with an AI?
No.
And that might be the most fundamental loss, the ability to appeal to mercy through human connection.
But how often does that actually work? Most defendants never get that moment. They're processed through plea bargains without ever seeing a courtroom. At least AI might give everyone the same consideration, even if it's not the human moment we idealize.
So we're back to choosing between a flawed system that sometimes allows for human connection and an efficient system that treats everyone equally but removes that possibility entirely.
When you put it that way, it sounds so bleak, like there's no good answer.
Maybe there isn't a perfect answer. Maybe the question is which set of trade-offs we can live with as a society.
Let's talk about something we haven't addressed yet: economic incentives. Who profits from AI judges, and does that influence how they're designed and deployed?
Oh, this is huge. So most of the AI judge systems being developed right now are created by private companies. LexisTech, Justice AI, CourtFlow, these are for-profit corporations that license their software to courts and municipalities. And they have a vested interest in expanding adoption as quickly as possible.
Wait, so taxpayer money is going to private companies to replace public servants?
Essentially, yes. And those companies have minimal public accountability. Their algorithms are proprietary. Their contracts with cities often include non-disclosure agreements. We don't know how much these systems cost, what the terms are, or who's making money from them.
Okay, but that's a problem with procurement and transparency, not with the technology itself. We could require open source algorithms for public justice systems.
We could, but we're not. Because the companies developing these systems argue that their competitive advantage depends on keeping their code secret, and cash-strapped cities are taking whatever deal they can get without asking hard questions.
So we're privatizing justice.
Slowly, yeah. And that should terrify everyone. Because once a city signs a 10-year contract with Justice AI, they're locked in. If the system has problems, they can't easily switch. If the company raises prices, they have no alternatives. It's like, what's the term, vendor lock-in?
This is giving me the same feeling I get about private prisons. Profit motives and justice don't mix well.
I actually agree with that. I think AI in courts can be valuable, but it needs to be publicly developed and publicly owned. The algorithms should be open source. The training data should be auditable. No private company should control the machinery of justice.
Good luck convincing governments to invest in that when they can outsource it cheaply to a tech company that promises immediate results.
Are there examples of public AI systems? Anyone doing this the right way?
Estonia, actually. Their AI court system is developed by their e-governance academy, which is a public institution. The code is open source. Independent researchers can audit it. It's not perfect, but it's a much better model than privatization.
And they're a small country with a strong tradition of digital governance and transparency. Scaling that to the US, with 50 states, thousands of jurisdictions, and a political system that's deeply influenced by corporate lobbying, I don't see it happening.
That's depressing. So we're probably going to end up with the worst version of this because of money and politics.
Maybe, but maybe there's still time to change course. Daphne, you seem really frustrated by this.
I am, because it feels like we're sleepwalking into a future where justice becomes a product you can buy. And the people who can't afford good lawyers now definitely won't be able to afford, I don't know, premium AI justice services or something.
That's a legitimate concern. We could end up with a two-tiered system where wealthy defendants get human judges and everyone else gets algorithms.
Actually, that's already starting to happen. Some high-profile defense attorneys are including AI impact statements in their court filings, basically arguing their clients deserve human consideration, not algorithmic processing. It's becoming a legal strategy.
Wow. So if you can afford a good lawyer, you can argue your way out of the AI system.
Exactly, which defeats the whole purpose of supposedly impartial technology. It just becomes another advantage for people with resources.
Of course. Every system we create ends up benefiting the people who already have power.
It doesn't have to be that way. If we guarantee everyone the right to choose between AI and human judges, that levels the playing field.
But then you're back to the capacity problem. If everyone chooses human judges, you haven't solved the backlog. The whole point of AI was supposed to be expanding access to justice, but if people opt out, it accomplishes nothing.
So how do you balance choice with efficiency?
Maybe you don't give unlimited choice. Maybe certain types of cases are AI only, certain types are human only, and certain types offer a choice. You'd need to carefully define those categories based on complexity and stakes.
Who defines those categories, though? Because I guarantee you the cases that get relegated to AI only will be the ones involving poor people and minor offenses. The system will be designed to process the powerless efficiently while preserving human judgment for the powerful.
Yeah, that's exactly what will happen if we're not careful. And once that structure is in place, it's almost impossible to change because the people most affected have the least political power.
This is really highlighting how AI judges aren't just a technical question. They're a question about power, equity, and what kind of society we want to build.
Absolutely. And that's why I keep saying we need to engage with this technology rather than reject it outright. Because if we reject it, someone else will develop it without our input, and we'll end up with something much worse.
But engagement assumes we have power to shape the outcome. When private companies and government bureaucracies are making decisions behind closed doors, public engagement is mostly theater.
So what do we do? Just accept that this is happening and hope for the best?
No. I think we need organized resistance. Community groups, civil rights organizations, legal advocates pushing back and demanding transparency, public ownership, and strict regulations before this goes any further.
Have there been successful resistance movements?
A few. In San Francisco, community activists successfully blocked a pilot program in 2024 that would have used AI for bail decisions. They argued it would disproportionately harm Black and Latino defendants. The city council voted it down after months of protests and testimony.
Okay, so grassroots organizing can work.
Sometimes, but it takes enormous effort, and most cities don't have the organized resistance that San Francisco does. Detroit's program went through with barely any public debate because people didn't know it was happening until it was already implemented.
Which again points to the need for mandatory public comment periods and impact assessments before any AI justice system is deployed. That should be federal law.
Is there any movement toward that kind of regulation?
There are bills in Congress, but they're stalled. The Algorithmic Accountability Act has been introduced 3 times and hasn't passed. There's no political will to regulate AI aggressively because the tech industry has enormous lobbying power.
And meanwhile, the technology keeps advancing and spreading. By the time we get meaningful regulations, if we ever do, it'll be too late. The systems will be entrenched.
This whole conversation is making me realize how little control ordinary people have over technological change. It just happens to us.
That's a really important observation. We often talk about technology as inevitable, but it's not. These are choices being made by specific people with specific interests.
Right. AI judges aren't falling from the sky. They're being built and deployed by companies that want to make money and governments that want to cut costs. Those are choices we could make differently.
But we'd need political will and public engagement. And honestly, most people don't pay attention to court system reforms until it affects them personally.
Which is usually too late. You don't care about AI judges until you're standing in front of one.
So how do we create urgency around this issue before more people get hurt?
Stories. Personal testimonies from people who've been harmed by these systems. That mother in Detroit, the business owner in Phoenix, the kid who gets processed through an algorithm without anyone seeing their potential. Those stories humanize the issue in a way that abstract debates about bias and accountability don't.
Yeah, people connect with stories. Data is important, but stories make you feel something. And feeling something is what motivates action.
Let's imagine we're 5 years from now, 2030. AI judges have become more common. What does the landscape look like? Best case scenario and worst case scenario. Iris, give us the optimistic vision.
Okay, best case. By 2030, we have a hybrid system that's been thoughtfully implemented with strong safeguards. AI handles the preliminary analysis for most cases. It processes evidence, identifies relevant precedents, flags inconsistencies, and generates a detailed report. But human judges make all final decisions, especially for serious cases. The AI has reduced case backlogs by 60%, meaning people get justice faster. Sentencing disparities based on race and income have decreased because the AI identifies and corrects for historical biases. Public defenders have more time to spend with clients because the AI does routine legal research. And because the systems are publicly owned and open source, independent researchers continuously audit them for fairness. Overall, justice is more accessible, more consistent, and more equitable than it was in 2025.
That's a beautiful vision. Let me give you the nightmare scenario. By 2030, most municipal courts have outsourced judicial functions to 3 major tech companies. The algorithms are black boxes protected by trade secrets. Wealthy defendants routinely opt out of AI processing by hiring expensive lawyers who argue for human consideration. Poor defendants get processed through automated systems that perpetuate historical biases because they were trained on biased data and nobody has the resources to fix them. Appeal rates have skyrocketed, but appeals courts are also backlogged, so AI rulings become effectively final. Community trust in the justice system has eroded because people feel processed rather than heard, and several high-profile wrongful convictions have been traced to AI errors that nobody caught because judges rubber-stamped the recommendations. Overall, we've automated inequality and called it progress.
Wow, those are radically different futures. Which one is more likely?
That's the question, isn't it? What trajectory are we actually on?
Honestly, we're heading closer to the nightmare. Not because people want that outcome, but because we're not putting in the work to achieve the better vision. The default path, if we just let market forces and bureaucratic inertia guide us, leads to privatization and corner cutting.
I think we're somewhere in the middle. Some jurisdictions will do it right, others will mess it up. We'll learn from failures and successes. It'll be messy, but that's how all technological transitions work.
But people's lives are at stake during that messy transition period. That's not acceptable.
I know, but what's the alternative? We can't stop technological development. We can only try to guide it in better directions.
We absolutely can stop it in certain contexts. We banned human cloning. We heavily restrict genetic engineering. We can decide that some applications of AI are too risky or unethical. Justice could be one of those areas.
So you're arguing for a moratorium on AI judges?
At least for binding decisions in criminal cases, yeah. Let the technology mature. Let us develop better safeguards and regulations. Let civil society have time to debate what kind of justice system we want before we lock ourselves into technological systems that are hard to reverse.
But every year we wait. Thousands of people sit in jail waiting for trial. The humanitarian cost of the status quo is enormous. Caution has a price too.
So does recklessness. And deploying systems we don't fully understand in contexts this important feels reckless to me.
Let me ask a different question. Is there any scenario where you'd all agree AI judges are appropriate?
Small claims court, low-stakes civil disputes, traffic violations, cases where the facts are straightforward and the consequences are minor.
Maybe. But even there, I'd want human review available on request. And I'd want strict limits preventing scope creep into more serious cases.
I could live with that. Like if you got a parking ticket and an AI processed it, that doesn't bother me. But anything involving jail time or taking away someone's kids? No way.
So there's potential common ground around limiting the scope.
The problem is that's not how these systems get deployed in practice. They start small, prove themselves in low-stakes contexts, and then advocates argue for expanding them because they're working so well. Before you know it, they're handling criminal cases.
That's a slippery slope argument. We can draw clear legal lines that prevent expansion beyond certain case types.
Can we, though? Courts are always under pressure to do more with less. If AI is available and it's cheaper than hiring more judges, there will always be pressure to expand its use.
So the economic pressures undermine the legal safeguards.
Exactly, which is why I'm skeptical about limiting scope as a solution. The incentives are all wrong.
What if we flipped the incentives? Like what if federal funding was only available for public, open source AI systems with mandatory human review? Make it financially advantageous to do it right.
That's actually a great idea. Use funding to create positive incentives rather than relying on regulations that can be lobbied away.
I like that too, though getting that through Congress would be nearly impossible with tech industry lobbying.
Let's talk about something else. What happens to human judges in a world where AI handles more cases? Do we need fewer judges? And what does that mean for the legal profession?
We might need fewer judges for routine cases, but we'd need more judges for complex cases and for reviewing AI decisions. The role changes from doing everything to focusing on cases that require human judgment.
But that's a hard sell to judges who see AI as a threat to their profession. There's been significant resistance from judicial associations in several states.
I mean, I understand that. If you spent years becoming a judge and suddenly a machine can do your job faster, that's threatening.
Is that resistance justified, or is it just protecting professional territory?
Both. Some of it is legitimate concern about justice, some of it is self-interest. But honestly, even the self-interest part is understandable. We're talking about fundamentally changing the nature of their profession without their input.
Which is why judges need to be involved in designing these systems. They understand the nuances of judicial decision-making in ways engineers don't. A collaborative approach would produce better systems and reduce resistance.
Have there been examples of that collaboration?
Some. In the Netherlands, they're developing an AI system for commercial litigation where judges and computer scientists are working together from the beginning. The judges define what factors matter, what constitutes edge cases, what level of explanation is needed. The engineers translate that into code. It's a much more thoughtful process.
That's the model we need. But it's slow and expensive, which is why most jurisdictions aren't doing it. They're buying off-the-shelf solutions from tech companies instead.
And we're back to the problem of taking shortcuts to save money.
Everything seems to come back to resources and political will.
Because that's what it is. We have the technology to do this responsibly. We have models that work. We just don't have the collective commitment to invest in doing it right.
Which brings us back to public engagement and advocacy. If people demand better systems and are willing to pay for them through taxes, we can have them.
But most people don't think about the justice system until they need it. And by then, it's too late to change the systems.
So we need to make this issue visible and urgent before more people get hurt. How do we do that?
Media coverage helps. Investigative journalism exposing failures, documentaries showing the human impact, but also legal challenges. Groups like the ACLU and Electronic Frontier Foundation filing lawsuits to establish precedents about algorithmic accountability.
And positive examples, highlighting jurisdictions that are doing it right, showing that responsible AI in courts is possible, not just theoretical.
I think education matters too. Most people don't understand how these systems work. They hear AI and think it's magic or it's evil. Neither is true. We need public education about what AI actually is and what it can and can't do.
That's a good point. A lot of the fear around AI comes from misunderstanding.
Right, and a lot of the overconfidence comes from misunderstanding too. People either think AI is perfect or think it's useless. The reality is complicated.
We're coming up on the end of our time, but I want to leave with something actionable. If someone listening to this wants to engage with this issue, what can they actually do?
First, find out if your city or state is considering AI judge pilots. Most of these decisions happen in obscure city council meetings or administrative hearings that nobody attends. Show up, ask questions, demand transparency about what systems are being considered, who's developing them, and what safeguards exist.
Second, support organizations that are working on algorithmic accountability. Groups like AI Now Institute, Data and Society, the ACLU's Project on Speech, Privacy and Technology. They need funding and volunteers to do the research and advocacy work that keeps these systems honest.
And honestly, just talk about it. With your friends, your family, on social media, these issues stay invisible because people think they're too technical or they don't affect them personally. But they affect all of us. The more people understand what's at stake, the harder it is for bad implementations to slip through.
Those are concrete steps. What about on a personal level? If you end up in a situation where an AI system is involved in your case, what should you know?
Know your rights. In jurisdictions using AI, you often have the right to know that AI was used, to understand what factors it considered, and to request human review. But you have to ask. The system won't volunteer that information.
And document everything. If you believe an AI made an unfair decision, having detailed records makes it possible to challenge it later and contributes to building the evidence base about where these systems fail.
Also, don't be afraid to question it. I think people assume that if a computer decided something, it must be right. But these systems make mistakes. They have biases. Your instinct that something is unfair might be correct.
Trust your gut, basically.
Yeah, trust your gut and demand explanations. You deserve to understand why decisions are being made about your life.
Let me ask each of you one final question. When you think about the future of justice, what gives you hope?
I have hope because I see incredible people working on this problem. engineers who care about fairness, not just efficiency, judges who are willing to question their own biases, activists who refuse to let these systems go unchallenged. The technology is a tool, and tools can be used well or poorly. I believe we're capable of using them well if we commit to it.
I have hope because I've seen resistance work. San Francisco blocking that bail algorithm. Communities organizing to demand transparency. Every time people push back and win, it sets a precedent. It shows that technological change isn't inevitable, that we have agency. That gives me hope, even though I'm generally pessimistic about where we're headed.
For me, it's the conversations like this one. The fact that we're talking about these issues, grappling with the complexity, refusing easy answers. That's how change happens. Not through perfect solutions, but through ongoing dialogue and struggle. As long as we keep questioning, keep demanding better, there's hope.
And for me, honestly, it's knowing that people are listening to conversations like this and thinking about these issues. You're not passive consumers of technological change. You can be active participants in shaping what kind of future we build. That's where hope comes from all of us engaging with these hard questions together. Before we wrap up, I want to circle back to something Daphne said earlier about stories. We've talked a lot about data and systems and policies, but behind all of this are real people. That mother in Detroit didn't become a statistic by choice. She had hopes, fears, a life that was disrupted by a system she couldn't understand or challenge effectively. And she's not alone.
Right. And I think that's what we need to keep at the center of this conversation. Every case that goes through an AI system is a person's life. Whether it's a $30 shoplifting charge or a custody dispute or a serious criminal case, there's a human being on the other end who deserves dignity and fairness.
The challenge is that systems thinking and individual humanity can feel at odds with each other. When you're designing a system for millions of cases, it's easy to lose sight of the individual. But that's exactly when we need to be most vigilant. The bigger the system, the more important it is to preserve space for individual consideration.
And I think that's where hybrid models really shine. Not because they're perfect, but because they force us to maintain that connection between systematic efficiency and individual humanity. The AI can process the data, but the human has to look at the person and make a judgment.
So the goal isn't to choose between human judges and AI judges. It's to find a way to combine the strengths of both while mitigating the weaknesses.
Exactly, and that requires humility. Admitting that humans are flawed and admitting that AI is flawed. Working with both sets of limitations rather than pretending either one is perfect.
Which brings us back to transparency and accountability. Whether it's a human judge or an AI system, we need mechanisms to identify problems and correct them. That's what a healthy justice system looks like.
And we need to remember that justice isn't just a technical problem to solve. It's an ongoing process of trying to treat each other fairly, recognizing our shared humanity, and creating systems that support those values rather than undermine them.
That's beautifully said. And I think it's a good place to start wrapping up. This conversation has covered a lot of ground. We've talked about the technology behind AI judges, the real-world implementations and their failures, the economic and political forces shaping deployment, the philosophical questions about mercy and humanity, and the different futures we might be heading toward.
And I hope we've made clear that this isn't settled. The future of AI and justice is being decided right now, in city councils and courtrooms and corporate boardrooms and community meetings. It's not too late to influence the outcome.
But it requires engagement. It requires people caring enough to show up, ask questions, demand better. Technological change happens fast, but democratic accountability takes effort.
And it requires empathy, remembering that behind every case is a person who deserves to be treated with dignity. Whether that's through a human judge or an AI system or some combination, that principle has to guide us.
If you take nothing else from this conversation, take this. AI judges are coming. They're already here in limited forms, and they're going to spread. The question isn't whether to use AI in courts. The question is how to use it in ways that make justice more accessible and equitable rather than less. And answering that question requires all of us. We want to hear from you. Have you or someone you know been affected by algorithmic decision-making in the justice system? Do you live in a city considering AI judges? What concerns or hopes do you have about this technology? The conversation doesn't end here. It continues with you.
And if you're interested in diving deeper, we'll post resources in the show notes. Research papers on algorithmic bias, organizations working on these issues, guides for how to engage with local government on technology policy. This is a complex topic, and we've only scratched the surface.
We'd also love to hear your questions. If there's an aspect of AI judges we didn't cover that you want to understand better, let us know. Maybe we'll do a follow-up episode.
And honestly, just thank you for listening. These conversations are hard. They don't have easy answers. But having them is how we figure out what kind of future we want to build together.
Couldn't have said it better. To everyone listening, thank you for spending this time with us. Thank you for caring about justice, about fairness, about the kind of society we're creating for ourselves and future generations. Keep questioning, keep engaging, and keep demanding systems that serve people rather than the other way around.
Stay curious.
Stay skeptical.
Stay human.
And we'll see you next time. Take care, everyone.